quality assurance body UMALUSI has approved the release of the 2021 national examination results. UMALUSI has commended the Department of Basic Education for its efforts to protect the integrity of the exams despite the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. The results will be released on Friday.
UMALUSI Council makes the following statement about the DBE NSC results of 2021. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of the UMALUSI Council noted that apart from some examination irregularities identified during the writing and marking of the examinations, there were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the credibility and integrity of the November 2021 NSC examinations as a whole. That exam administered by the Department of Basic Education and Training. The Executive Committee of Council approves, therefore, the release of the DBE November 2021 NSC examination results based on available evidence that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the examination policies and regulations.
Let's get you more on this. We're joined by Xolani Fakude from the South African Democratic Teachers Union. He's the Secretariat Officer. Mr. Fakude, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Perhaps let's start with the decision of the courts to say that the matric results should be made public. Your position on that?
Thank you very much, Tuzile. First, let me greet you. Let me greet the viewers as well. I must say, Tuzile, that as a union, we really have received this decision with a lot of disappointment, I must be honest with you. Actually, in our statement, we are saying that we are receiving this decision or this court ruling with disdain, because we feel, Tuzile, that this decision, this particular court ruling, it is not necessarily about our learners. It is not about the public education system, but rather at the very center of this is that you've got also business interest. I mean, part of the submissions that were made by the AfriForum and others were really pointing towards that direction, that also we've got particular business interest at the core of this, because newspapers sell a lot of numbers when we release matric results. But again, because what is important for us as a union is that we feel very strongly that this particular beauty pageant about matric results is really extremely short-sighted. The reason we say that is that we need to be able as a country to actually look into the entire education system, from the early childhood development sector to the entire journey of a learner in this particular country. And we feel that we should be focusing on infrastructure. We should be focusing on making sure that there is a teacher behind or in front of every learner. We should make sure that there is LTSM delivered on time, as we're busy right now, for instance, dealing with in-system Cape issues. So when we get to this matric results phase, I mean, it becomes all a beauty contest about which province is number 1, which one is number 9, without necessarily considering what really goes into the value system and how it varies from one province to the next. So we really feel we're taken aback at Tuzile, and we feel that we really should review and renew and rather see differently how we work with education in this particular country.
And you have mentioned a number of stakeholders, right, in that conversation of renewal of education in South Africa. What role do you see them playing? You talk about the media and being driven by a particular interest of publishing newspapers, but that's not all that they have said. SANEF's chairperson was saying that, consultation with us would have been a little bit better instead of getting a last-minute decision.
Well, the fact of the matter is that this is not a new discussion. As a matter of fact, we've been having this discussion for quite a number of years right now. A learner formation like COSAS, for instance, has been in the forefront of this. So this is not necessarily a new conversation that we are having. And it remains our view. Yes, other reasons have been raised, despite those of just really about business interest. But when SANEF comes and says that, but then we should have been informed in time, etc., we are saying to Tuzile, as much as we've got those particular interests of the media, but we are saying, what about the interest of the learners? The learners tell us that when you publish this particular matric results, it puts them under undue pressure and it has got particular social negative consequences. Now we are asking ourselves as a union that why is it that we should take our learners through that particular level of anxiety, especially when you look into this particular cohort. There's a cohort that would have lost at least about 2 years or so of disrupted learning due to COVID. So we are saying that we should do things that seek to benefit those that are at the heart of the education system in this particular country. And the learners, yes, Sanef might be correct, it's also about consultation, but the fact of the matter is that in various platforms where we sit with various stakeholders, including the learners, including some parent formations, etc., we have been discussing this particular issue. And our conclusion is that it does not benefit any learner when you actually publish results. It is all about those business interests. We are saying let us all play a transformative role, a role that seeks to really empower our learners as we move forward, not necessarily to expose them to the necessary community-based social consequences of publishing results.
This case by AfriForum, supported by Maroela Media, was brought by an 18-year-old matric pupil, and she argues that there'll only be 1 week from the date of announcement of the matric results until the day on which she has to report in Bloemfontein to commence her orientation at the residence she intends to stay in as for further education. Much has been said also about the late publication of the results, not giving enough time for those learners who would have then progressed for higher education to then sort themselves out. Is there something to be said about that?
No, of course there is, and I feel that certainly the learner who felt strongly in that view, in all fairness, it is quite fair for her to think in that particular way. But the reality of the matter then is that there are other mechanisms which can be used effectively and quite speedily for an individual learner to receive their results. Those mechanisms are there without necessarily having to parade their personal details. Also, we've got the new act on the publication or the publishing of personal information. What then does this particular ruling say to that particular act? Are we therefore saying that these learners, the class of 2021 and others, are lesser South Africans and they don't deserve to be covered by a similar act? But then again, another point becomes the following, that when you talk about the stage at which matric results are received, vis-a-vis when learners become students and start their education, it is all about collaboration. It is all about the multiple sectors within this particular space interacting. We should then be in a position to interact regularly with the higher education department, for instance, so that we can have some synergy. That has always been part of the challenges in this country, that we've got very good policies, we've got very, very good intentions, but somehow there is always, at an implementation level, a lack of synergy. So this is where higher education then needs to come into the picture and therefore understand where these learners are coming from. So yes, every learner has got a right to raise issues as far as they are concerned, but we are saying and we insist to those that it is not to the benefit of the learners, this particular ruling court decision. It is not to the benefit of their parents. It is actually not beneficial in any case to our education system, and we insist in our very strong view that it's all about business interests.
So you have pointed out a number of things throughout the conversation: a lack of synergy, a need for renewal and reimagining our education system. You also pointed out that this is not the first time, that we are going through this, and we don't seem to be finding each other as different stakeholders. That we are not getting it right, according to your view, should tell us what then?
Well, it should tell us that we certainly need to create more platforms for continuous engagement. We also need to be in a position to be guided by the science, educationally sound points. That is where we need to be. Our view, Tutuzile, like I said before, is that here the priority was mainly about the business interest. So what we need to do is that we need to have that open door policy across all the sectors, across all the interest groups in this particular sector. Because as much as you are mentioning one particular learner who would have been part of the filing of the papers in court, there is also a formal grouping of learners, by the way, for instance, in the form of COSAS, who have made it very clear that in their view, the mass publishing of these results is not necessarily beneficial to them as a group of learners. So we are saying that we need to find that particular balance, but then let us at all times, by all means, really open up the space for engagement. Let us all feel that we can, with confidence, approach each other, engage each other, put facts in front of the table and be in a position to find solutions. What is also important to do is that we all must be aware that education is a public good. And therefore, it must be us as a society, it must be us as a collective who really seek to protect this education as a public good. Let us fight to ensure that there is an increase in investment, public investment in the education sector. We know that we've got infrastructure challenges in the rural provinces, etc. We are still talking about stationery and others being delivered on time, etc. Let us take accountability, and let us all have an open door policy, and let us be in a position to engage on a regular basis. Then we can be able to find each other and find the solution as we move forward. But what we are saying as a point is that it should all be to the interest and to the benefit of the learners, not a private business groupings.
Xolani Fakude, I beg your pardon, is the South African Democratic Teachers Union Secretariat Officer. Many thanks for your time this afternoon.